sees the means of production, and the like and subscribe button. Texas just defined man and woman. Here's why that matters. Yeah. Critics say House Bill 229, which has gone to the governor, discriminates against trans people, but the full effect remains to be seen. Strictly defines man and woman based on reproductive organs. The bill has no civil or criminal penalties attached, but instead will take these new definitions and apply them across state records. Let me guess, the definitions are inexact and contradictory. After an amendment added in the House, the bill says intersex people are not considered a third sex, but, quote, must receive accommodations in accordance with state and federal law. What? How do... Intersex people are... Oh, in our bill, which will concretely define sex, you've got two kinds of people. There's also a third kind, but they're not their own kind. But yeah, you have to, like, do the right thing with them. What? So what are intersex people? What happens to them? I don't know. It also says that in the context of biological, separate is not inherently unequal. That's great. We have feminist anti-trans legislation. This will inevitably lead to mismatched documents. Someone who presents as a man but has a driver's license that says they're a female will have to out themselves every time ID is required. Okay, so this is this essentially just like a state version of when the federal government stopped recognizing trans people for their documentation, like passports or whatever? You're essentially looking at the template, like a blueprint for implementing that kind of discriminatory legislation on a state level, which will probably be picked up by other red states. Anytime she's required to show her driver's license, she would be compelled to explain why her appearance doesn't align with her documentation. That creates ample daily opportunities for discrimination. Yeah, that is the point. To fully understand the implications, this would require combing through state statute and applying this definition every time the words male and female are used. The language of this bill indicates it was motivated to keep trans people out of bathrooms that align with their gender identity, but it doesn't attach criminal or civil penalties for using an opposite bathroom, for example. Okay? Right, because it's just meant to set the definitions. How novel is this? I mean, it seems like this has been done before. It might be... Democrats also raised questions about women who can't conceive, are postmenopausal, or are born without a reproductive system designed to produce ova. Trox Claire said the bill should be interpreted to mean people who have systems that, if normally developed, would fit into these two categories, whether or not they are fully developed, whether or not they are fully capable of functioning. What does that mean? People who have systems that, if normally developed, would fit into these categories. So the marker they're referring to isn't even like an actual thing. It's like an aspirational thing. Like, well, yeah, you're is still a woman because you're like you're a female because of like the ova. But your body doesn't have ova, but your body wants to. So like that counts. Very good. We love our philosophy. I love having spent 5 years debating the like nonsensical definitions of sex for it to, you know, and now it's just being encoded into state law. This is just esoteric mysticism. Yeah, of course it is. The goal of these people, what they really want to say is that males and females have divinely soul-based differences, and you can just tell, like capital J, capital T, you know? I've been seeing so much divine mystique or divine feminine mystique bullshit on the TL lately, I have to say. Where like what it means to be a woman is being like sort of boiled down to this raw animalistic biological essentialism, and it's just, oh man, fascism and social media. Montana's definition law, which listed out more than 40 places would be applied, was struck down by a state judge in February. I doubt this one will get struck down. Maybe it will. I don't know. Do they address intersex people any further? Nope. Intersex people fall into the category of they'll just take a look at you and decide what your genitals are supposed to look like. You know, Texas House Bill 229. Well, I sincerely doubt the governor is going to strike this one down. ACLU of Texas is written on it. Texas politicians broke records by filing more than 120 anti-transgender bills this legislative session. Nice, nice. Very good, very good. My hope is if it gets covered enough, it might make Texas look so bad they reconsider. I would not bet on that. Sorry, we don't do false hope, you know, please here. That's not very likely. It's probably gonna go through. I mean, it's gone to the governor. Governor Hot Wheels. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that's likely at all. Why are progressives still in Texas? Well, there are progressive cities in Texas. Also, houses are cheaper. The following quote can be attributed to Ash Hall, parentheses, they, them. That's nice. Can't expect much of a statement on this from the ACLU. No audio? Oh, I'm sorry. I still had desktop audio muted from when I was running around fighting the fly. Didn't need to mute it, just, you know.
Defining biological is now making its way to the governor's desk. House Bill 229 passed overnight in the Senate along a party line vote of 20-11. Now, this bill requires state agencies to not only recognize people's assigned at birth, it also provides guidelines about what exactly that is.
The bill states there are biological differences between men and women,
Really?
and that these differences can leave women physically vulnerable to specific forms of violence, like violence. The bill also states, due to these biological differences...
Do you think at some point we're going to get a bill that explicitly describes the biological differences between the races? Because there are. You know, like I burn a little easier than a black guy. Like, I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but it makes just as much sense, you know? Normally, this kind of like top-down definitional prescriptivism it's not usually done by governments, you know? Usually because doing so, like you start to like unearth the inherent taxonomical inconsistencies. For example, the fact that like if you talk to any scientist, say from, you know, a biological research lab, you know, you talk about it's the differentiation between is actually quite complicated.
There are legitimate reasons to justify separate spaces in sports, prisons, and restrooms.
Senator Mays Middleton sponsored this bill. He says the legislation is meant to provide a clear definition about who is male and who is female. However, critics have warned this legislation might erase intersex and transgender people from state records, while also
What an unintended consequence.
laying out the foundation to treating women differently based on their sex.
Attempting to protect women in ways we may actually contribute to the erosion of their rights. And so, Senator, I have seen a growing concern of legislation like this that could be used to erase the existence of non-binary and transgender Texans. So why is your bill necessary when agencies already have procedures for collecting sex and gender data?
Well, because there's not always an accurate way to do that. And I'll point out, this is already being done. Executive Order, January 30th, 2025. All Texas agencies must ensure that agency rules, internal policies, employment practices, and other...
This don't work, of course. The reason they're doing this is to eradicate transgender people from public life. Intersex people are just a casualty in that war, but the goal is that it is essentially, even if it's medically possible to transition, which maybe it won't be, you know, depending, right? Because they're trying to get rid of that too. But even if you could medically transition, even if you're a snatched bitch who's serving cunt or whatever, with your big titties, you know, you want to do something? Here's your driver's license. It says M. They're not even gonna have it say M. They're gonna have it say like a big male stamped on it with like a little dick icon or something. And then you're gonna have to get talked down to by the cop or whatever, you know, whoever you're showing your driver's license. The goal is that if you're trans and you're living in a visibly trans way in any way, that you are constantly subjected to harassment, abuse, scrutiny, discrimination, the goal being to eradicate them from public life. Exactly. You can't use the restroom. If you're a trans chick and you want to use the restroom in public, like you're at a sports stadium, you have to hike your, you know, high heels and or whatever into the men's bathroom and sit in a stall while a bunch of guys ogle you on the way in and out, you know? You want to do anything that requires any use of your ID, everyone's going to know you're trans all the time. It's not possible to pass. That's the point. It's not about intersex people or non-binary people necessarily, because there are non-binary people who medically transition. It's just about, well, it is about non-binary people because they're also trans, but I mean, like, it's primarily directed to eradicate trans people from public life. What's with the hate against trans people? I don't know. What's with the hate against Jews? Fascists need outgroups to define themselves against. Hatred for the degenerates is like the main emotional driver. It's how they pitch themselves.
Other actions comply with the law and biological reality that there are only two sexes, male and female. Right
now, it's unclear if Governor Greg Abbott will sign this bill into law. You can read more about the definitions laid out in this legislation right now on KXAN.com.
That's great. Yeah, I imagine he'll sign it. I would be very, very, very surprised if he didn't sign it. So get ready for that. Imagine it's going to be happening in a lot more states. Probably, maybe California, maybe Newsom will push for it. Who knows?